Georgia Tech fans, you got him. You got your quarterback finally. I am super stoked for Georgia Tech fans about this one. I think you got a very good quarterback here. So, Georgia Tech did just go out and officially sign their new quarterback, Alberto Mendoza, the brother of Fernando Mendoza, who a lot of people might know from Indiana. His brother just won a Heisman Trophy. And right after the national championship game last night, Alberto Mendoza did enter the transfer portal because the whoever played the national championship does have a longer window to enter the portal after that game, so they could stick around for the portal or for the national championship game. And it seemed like Alberto Mendoza was going to stay. Some people kind of speculated that he would enter the portal, and Georgia Tech was looking for a quarterback. So Fernando, or not Fernando, but Alberto hit the portal this morning, like early this morning, late last night, and Georgia Tech was immediately the front runner. As of right now, Georgia Tech has just signed Alberto Mendoza, so you have your new quarterback, and I think this is an absolutely amazing fit for Georgia Tech and an absolutely amazing fit for Alberto Mendoza. So, not going to go too in depth on them, but kind of give my thoughts and opinions on it, run some numbers by you, and kind of let you know what to look for in this, because I believe that you just got a very, very underrated and very good quarterback that's going to be around for a few years. So, Georgia Tech fans, you guys showed me massive amounts of support in the last video that I posted, the last few Georgia Tech videos I posted. So, we're going to keep the Georgia Tech content coming, especially as this team is finally getting built up in the transfer portal. Super excited to see what they've done so far. And this is a very big move. Very big move, along with another portal pickup, who I just made a video about, and I think it's going to be a very good fit as well. So, yeah. So, if you're a Georgia Tech fan, greatly appreciate it if you do consider subscribing to the channel. Like I said, you guys will show me massive amounts of support. But let's get into it. So, Georgia Tech, one of the early schools showing interest in Alberto Mendoza. Like I said, just now signed him. So, Georgia Tech needed a quarterback. There were a lot of Georgia Tech fans kind of speculating what was going to happen at quarterback, whether they were going to go with a young guy, whether they were going to try and pull somebody out of the portal. We saw Georgia Tech go after Bo Perbula. We saw him go after, I believe they were in on Lagway, and some other quarterbacks as well. Anthony Calandria was in there, some other ones as well. So Georgia Tech was in on quarterbacks in the transfer portal, and it seemed like Georgia Tech was going to be a spot that was going to land a pretty solid transfer quarterback. And as the dominoes started to fall, I think Georgia Tech fans started to lose a lot of hope, as in finding a quarterback. You were kind of in that situation where you were kind of settling for what you already have on the roster, because you lost Haynes King to the draft because he's out of eligibility. Aaron Philo transferred to Florida. He followed Buster Faulkner. So you were stuck with kind of nothing there. Like I said, you were probably going to have to rely on a young guy. And luckily, last second, Georgia Tech pulled off a last second move and pulled out Alberto Mendoza out of the transfer portal. So he's a guy who's going to come in straight off the bat and compete for a starting job with some other quarterbacks on the roster already. I think that Alberto's going to be the favorite to get the job. I think he's ready to play. I think he's sat and developed enough. I think it's his time to see the field, and I think that was a big reason that Georgia Tech was on the radar for him. Right after, like the day after the national championship, which is today, Alberto was at Georgia Tech on a visit. So they just signed him as of like 2 minutes ago. Like I just got the notification while I started filming this, but he appeared 9 games in the 2025 season, completed. All right, so his passes went 18 for 24, 75% completion percentage, 286 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. He also rushed for 190 and 1 score. He had a very high passer rating, and kind of the sample size that we did see. What you'll see out of Alberto Mendoza, he has the ability to spread the ball around the field, so you'll have a super dynamic offense, kind of like what you did see with Buster Faulkner at Georgia Tech. And obviously, I don't think Alberto is going to be the running quarterback like Haynes King was. Like, it's going to be a little bit more of that Aaron Philo type, where you're going to see him sit back in the pocket and deliver some passes. And I think the run game is going to be very big this year as well. But Alberto, he's a super smart player, just like his brother, really quick with reads. He could read the defense very well so far that we've seen out of him. Super high upside quarterback. We saw what his brother did. We saw what his brother turned into. And you got to think, sitting a year under Cignetti or 2 years under Cignetti, I can't remember if it was 1 or 2 years Alberto was there, but sitting under Cignetti, learning behind Cignetti and his brother Fernando, you got to think there's some upside there, and you got to think that he's learned a lot that he hasn't been able to showcase because obviously he was sitting behind his brother Fernando. Brent Key has spoken already about the run game being super big next season. Like, they're going to focus pretty heavily on the run game. So they did go out and get Justice Haynes, which I just posted a video about last week. I think that's an absolutely massive move. And you're going to take some pressure off of a younger quarterback in Alberto Mendoza. You're not really going to be relying on him as much, so you'll see less mistakes. So you'll see the mistakes very limited. I think Justice Haynes is also one of the best running backs in the country. So that's going to help Alberto a lot, giving him a very solid run game, and that's going to open up the pass game to really let Alberto Mendoza shine on that side as well. I think you're going to see a lot of short to intermediate passing plays, a lot of play action work, because you did just bring in a new offensive coordinator who is going to run more of a pro style, I would assume, unless something does change. But anyways, Alberto does have 2 to 3 years of eligibility left. I think you got your guy. He's a guy who's, I think he's just going to get better and better and better as the years go. And like I said, you got him for a few years, so you have time to develop him. And I think he's going to be a very, very good player for Georgia Tech. Like I said, if you do jump into his stats from last year, it was a little sample size. He's going into a redshirt sophomore year. 286 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 pick, 99.4 QBR. Man, I really do. I really do think you have a good one. I think you have a very high ceiling guy. Now, there's going to be some people that's going to probably say this is only happening because his brother Fernando. That's just not the case. Alberto is a very good player. We've seen him at Indiana. I think a lot of Indiana fans, or probably every single Indiana fan, can vouch for that and say, like, in the sample size that you did see out of Alberto, he looked good. Before Indiana did bring in Josh Hoover for their quarterback next year, there were a lot of Indiana fans that were really wanting to see Alberto Mendoza start next year. And unfortunately, I think Indiana got a great quarterback as well in Josh Hoover. So I wouldn't say unfortunately, but for the people who wanted Alberto to start at Indiana next year, unfortunately, they did go out and get Josh Hoover. And Alberto did hit the transfer portal because you got to think in Alberto Mendoza's mind that he thinks he's ready to play as well, and I believe so as well. I think that he could be starting, and I think he's better than a lot of quarterbacks out there right now. So Georgia Tech, you got an absolutely, I think, very high ceiling, very good young quarterback on your hands who's, like I said, very smart player. He's going to learn a lot. He's going to get better as the years go on. You got a very good quarterback. Very good quarterback. This isn't just hype because of his brother. I believe Alberto Mendoza is a legit quarterback who's going to make a real name for himself at Georgia Tech, because I really like what Georgia Tech's doing. I really like the way they're trending after losing a lot of that roster. You lost almost your whole coaching staff. You lost a lot of the roster, a lot of the key positions on offense. And I really like what Brent Key is doing. I love the call to go get Alberto Mendoza. I love the call to go get Justice Haynes. And I'm going to have another portal video up about Georgia Tech as well, because I like what they've done all around in the transfer portal at every position. So if you are a Georgia Tech fan, I greatly appreciate, again, if you did consider subscribing to the channel, because we're going to keep putting out a lot of Georgia Tech content. We're going to have more on the way about the transfer portal and really going into next season, just all the Georgia Tech updates. So I greatly appreciate you guys. And that'll do it for this one. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.